it up for Dr. Jeffrey Ogbar coming to the stage.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Absolute pleasure to be here. I love coming to Atlanta, and I love the city. I tell people sometimes that if I were to anthropomorphize cities, I would say Atlanta is my best friend that I met in college, and we've grown together over the last 30 years or so. And I might not see Atlanta for a couple years, but we meet, we fall right back in, and don't miss a beat, and always have fun. So it was a lot for me to write this book on Atlanta, and I'm going to read an excerpt. I'm a professor, so I'm super long-winded, and I'll do my best. I have my timer right here. I'm a little nervous. Sandman might have to come and get me off the stage, but I have my timer set for 10 minutes. What I'm going to do is tell two stories. And many of us know about all the distinctions of Atlanta. Besides the traffic, we know, and besides the music, we know that Atlanta also has drawn more African Americans than any other city over the last 30 years. In fact, the metro area of Atlanta has more black folks than any metropolitan area in the country outside of New York City. And it's been a veritable black mecca. So in addition to just the raw numbers, you have in proportion highest concentration of black millionaires, highest concentration of black owned businesses, highest concentration of institutions of higher learning that are dedicated to black folks and all that. But we're going to start off with an Atlanta that is very different from the Atlanta we know now. And I'm going to tell the story of the very first black landowner in the city and the very first black dentist in the city, two different people. And then we will see what we can make out of this story. I've aged and my eyes have aged and I have to wear glasses, so bear with me as I read this excerpt. All right, so we'll start in the antebellum period, and for context, the state of Georgia in 1818 passed a series of laws that were very, very repressive to black people, saying at the time 99% of black people in the state of Georgia were enslaved. So less than 1% of people who were black were free in the entire state of Georgia. They represented about 40% of the entire population. And while Georgia also passed a series of laws saying that black people cannot even buy property. They cannot buy a person either, because there were people black folks who bought their family members from slavery and would free them. So you cannot free a black person. Even if a white person wanted to manumit someone in his or her will, the Georgia Assembly, by special order, had to approve even a manumitted person. So between 1835 and when Sherman burned down Atlanta in 1864, then 1865, only one person had ever been freed by that special gesture from the Georgia State Assembly. So to give you an idea, so in the city of Atlanta, under those conditions, which are already pretty bad, the city of Atlanta was like, hold my beer, I could do more. So they were like, we're gonna actually make it illegal for anyone to come here unless they file for a petition, they have to pay a fee to arrive here. And if you happen to be a black person in the city of Atlanta, if you have a friend to come in from out of town, they have to get special approval from the city council. There was no black organization could exist. In addition to the state of Georgia, no person could read or write, could be taught to read or write who was black. But then in the city of Atlanta, there were no independent black institutions at all. No schools, no churches, no social clubs, no boys and girls club, no gardening club, nothing at all that black people could create. So under those circumstances, let's get into our story. It's truly remarkable that some African Americans managed to achieve any semblance of success in the antebellum era. Despite these circumstances, some, even those legally enslaved, were able to do just that. Along with unique circumstances of the well-connected Solomon Lucky, who was a famous barber and the first wealthy black person in the city of Atlanta in the antebellum period, there were some fascinating stories of early black efforts of self-determination, including that of Laura Lavinia Kelly, a woman who was never enslaved and managed to purchase land in 1854, becoming the first black landowner in the city of Atlanta. Kelly was born in 1825 in Augusta to free parents who relocated to Georgia from South Carolina in the early 19th century. Her parents purchased at least 2 parcels of Augusta land in 1816, 2 years before the state outlawed any black person from buying land in the state without a white guardian. She moved to Atlanta in 1849 as an employee to Dr. James Alexander, who left Augusta to start a medical practice in the city. She was listed as a washerwoman and an ironer in the city's registry for free people of color. Her employer, Dr. Alexander, emerged as the city's leading physician during a smallpox epidemic. Shortly after her arrival, she met a man named John Combs, who was held in bondage there by two women. These two women inherited him as a boy, and they decided to enter a strange arrangement with Laura for this man. So around 1856, she negotiated a complex exchange with a third party, which included a quote-unquote land swap. She bought a plot of land. Her plot was, quote, City Lot 10, Land Lot 78 in the city records of Atlanta. And between 1854 and 1858, a couple years before the Civil War and secession, she was the only black landowner in the city. She negotiated with Mary and Jane Combs this land in exchange for the man whom she loved, John. While technically he was still their property, since you cannot free anyone, the women allowed John to live in a de facto state of freedom with his wife. Around 1857, Lord John left Atlanta and settled in Augusta. Dr. Alexander, for his part, was the white guardian and sponsor to allow her to purchase that land in the first place. He also became critical in founding Atlanta Medical College in 1854 and emerged as a full-throated secessionist in the following decade, serving in the Confederate Army's 8th Georgia Infantry as a surgeon. Simultaneously, Laura's oldest son, Thomas, and we'll come back to Thomas, served in the Union Army, rising to the ranks of a sergeant and became a military band leader. Beyond the remarkable story of Laura and John Combs, there were many African Americans who lived in a liminal space as professionally and socially privileged, yet technically enslaved. A particularly fascinating one is Dr. Roderick Badger, the city's first black dentist, who surprisingly grew successful from attracting white clientele. He was born on Independence Day in 1834 in DeKalb County. So Martha, a woman who was enslaved by Joshua Badger. He was a wealthy plantation owner and also a dentist. Joshua had several children with his wife and had at least two children, Roderick and Robert, from women whom he enslaved. He taught his two black sons and a white son the trade of dentistry. In 1855, Roderick married Mary Murphy, the daughter of an enslaver named Charles Murphy, and a woman that Charles held in bondage. Although legally enslaved, in 1856, Joshua granted his son Roderick resources to support his wife and settle in Atlanta and establish a practice. Believe it or not, the practice became very successful. It became so successful that it thrived, and there was white hostility from dentists. In line with the city's general hostility to black development of any kind, a group of whites believed to be bitterly jealous dentists by historians petitioned the Atlanta City Council to prevent a capitalist market with any measure of fair competition. In 1859, they argued to the Atlanta City Council that it was unfair to compete with black businesses. Quote, "We feel aggrieved as Southern citizens that your honorable body tolerates a Negro dentist, Roderick Badger, in our midst. In a justice to ourselves and the community, it ought to be abated. We, the residents of Atlanta, appeal to your justice." Unquote. In a moral and ethical universe where equal opportunity was considered unjust, they appealed to the state to prevent black professionals from existing. Despite the petition, Badger was able to maintain his practice. He had close ties, and this is important, he had close ties with very powerful whites. He was the son, and more importantly, legal property of a wealthy white planter who was also his guardian. His wife, Mary, was a daughter and legal property of a sitting state senator, former member of U.S. House of Representatives, and a wealthy lawyer in nearby Decatur. These relations, as well as those of his clientele, likely made Badger a safe and given some insulation from the punitive action of the city council. All right, so Solomon Lucky, the barber, I'm not going to get into his story for the sake of time, and the Badgers must have measured their privilege against that of the majority of black people while simultaneously recognizing the privileges that they enjoyed and basic rights that separated, but the lack of basic rights that separated them from most whites, including, but not limited to, traveling freely, gathering with friends and family, conducting business, and living a peaceful life with equal protection under the law. All these, of course, were starkly curtailed by white nationalism. But Charles Murphy, the father of Roderick, Dr. Badger's wife, he served as a delegate from DeKalb County during Georgia's debates around secession. Although he was an enslaver, he was an avowed white supremacist, he had a black daughter whom he supported, he was anti-secession. He died, and right as they were taking the vote, and her ownership went to a man named Milton Candler. The city's first black dentist, Dr. Badger, who was still legally the property of his enslaver, became an assistant. He was forced to be an assistant to the military officer, Milton Candler, his father, well, enslaver-in-law, I guess. Candler, in addition to being the brother of Coca-Cola founder Asa G. Candler, was the man who was the practical owner of his wife. After Sherman burned the land to the ground, however, Roderick and Mary could finally enjoy actual freedom. They relocated to Chicago. They settled there and lived for nearly 2 years. The Atlanta Medical School, you remember Dr. Alexander, the medical school that he helped found eventually became Emory University School of Medicine, which continued to exclude people of color until lawsuits in the 1960s. The White Combs family benefited financially, actually, in a way that most white enslavers did not. Because they had given up John for this land, John, of course, their wealth would have evaporated, but their land continued to grow. That land, instead of losing wealth when John was liberated by war, they ultimately passed the land through inheritance to sell it to the YMCA a generation later in 1886. After the war, Laura Combs, you remember she and John left Atlanta because Atlanta was pretty hostile. They came back to Atlanta because she believed post-war Atlanta offered more opportunities for black people. It had originally been an awfully anti-black city. In its resurgence, there was a moral, ethical, and physical renewal. It was now that most of Atlanta's city had been transformed, but the white nationalist presence remained quite virulent to the point that black people had to create institutions for by and about themselves, including but not limited to churches, schools, civic organizations, and even a bank. Black organizations that had been illegal now available in abundance. They fed the spiritual, intellectual, and financial needs of the people. She deposited money into the Freedmen's Savings and Trust Bank, which was based in Washington, D.C. At its height, the bank had deposits of over 100,000 newly freed black people and black institutions across the country, amounting to what will be in 2025 dollars about $117 billion. Dr. Badger, remember him, he coincidentally was appointed the secretary of the Atlanta branch of that bank. Laura Combs' children took advantage and contributed to Atlanta's institutions in many different ways. Although she died in 1872, 2 years after returning to Atlanta, of her 10 children, 7 survived adulthood. Her oldest son, Thomas, who was a Union Army veteran, moved to New Orleans, where he continued with his military band work, becoming a celebrated musician, essentially become the part of a group of black veterans who formed a new genre of music known as jazz. At least 2 of her children, Jacob and Oswald, attended Atlanta University. Her namesake daughter, Laura, also known as Annie, became a teacher and taught black children at Gray Street School and became a landowner like her mother. Oswald, who was born in 1861, graduated from Atlanta University and eventually became a professor of classics and music at Morris Brown College, a school founded by the AME, and Dr. Badger, again, served on this board of trustees. In a fascinating twist of historical fate, her son James enrolled in Shaw University, now Russ College in Holly Springs, Mississippi, where he dated a talented young student named Ida B. Wells. Wells recalled that James, quote, was her first love, unquote. He was also her first heartbreak. When he ended the relationship and married Anna Johnson, then started a career in education, remaining in the Holly Springs area for several years. There, Wells was constantly reminded of, quote, the impermanence of love, unquote, which according to her biographer made her trepidatious about committing to one person throughout her 20s. It was very unusual for a woman to go into her 30s at this point and not be married. But as she was not married, she poured herself into her professional work. By the time Wells eventually married in her early 30s, she had become an internationally renowned leader, an investigative journalist, suffragist, civil rights activist, co-founder of the NAACP. A brilliant woman, she poured her talents into enormous consequence. She was personal friends with Frederick Douglass, W.E.B. Du Bois, Jane Addams, Mary Church Terrell, and many other notables. Dr. Badger returned to Atlanta from Chicago, with his family and several children in 1866 and opened a practice at 39 Peachtree Street. He was a delegate in the Constitution to create a new state of a group to create the new Constitution in 1870. He advocated for civil rights for all people and supported Black uplift with self-determination. He eventually acquired multiple properties throughout the city, and when the Atlanta Constitution ran a story about the city's Black wealthy class, the paper listed Badger as being the largest Black landowner in the city of Atlanta. He was firmly in the place of the city's Black elite, sitting on the boards of various organizations that helped shape Atlanta. When he died in 1890, the Constitution extolled Badger's, quote, untiring industry, whereby, quote, he earned the respect and esteem of the best citizens of Atlanta to the day of his death. And I want to say, for the sake of time here, I'm a little limited at 15 minutes, so I'm going to have to close it out. But there is a story about Solomon Lucky that I think is quite beautiful. He died during the war, but his children continued to live, and his grandson became he served in World War I. He graduated from Clark College, and eventually he got his master's degree from Fordham University, moved to New York, where he taught school for nearly 40 years. And he died in 1976, 3 years after Maynard Jackson was elected the first Black mayor of a major city in the South. Thank you very much.
All right, man. Gotta give it a moment of time for Dr. Ogbar doing this thing. And give it up for this suit, man. You see this suit. I like this suit ain't up here, bro. Oh, sharp, man. You sharp. Good. I love it, man. Be sure to support his fantastic book, America's Black Capital. You can probably get it everywhere you buy books. And if you get one tonight, I'm